Man up in the 49ers backfield. Which Giants pass catcher might be worth a start on Sunday Night Football against Cincinnati? And what do you do with Commanders running backs not named Brian Robinson in Week 6? Plus, the FFPC Main Event fifth-place team owner after Week 5, Nick Zappone, will join us to talk about Tucker Kraft, Kendra Miller, Tank Dell, and a whole lot more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, hello, and welcome to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Greetings and salutations to each one of you listening, streaming, downloading, watching. We appreciate each and every one of you. This is the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship at myffpc.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. You know me from the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, the Road of His High Stakes Slowdown, and of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of Fantasy Football 1, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to analyze the Denver backfield with Audric Estime coming forward to gum up the works even more, which we really appreciate. We're also going to get into the rise of Tank Bigsby, how that affects you if you are a Travis Etienne owner, or maybe if you're just a Tank Bigsby owner. We're also going to talk with the Week 5 FFPC Main Event fifth-place team owner, Nick Zappone, who is going to talk about Roschon Johnson, Kirk Cousins, and a whole lot more tonight. If you want to connect with us on the X machine, please do so at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman, and always check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship over at KFFSC.com. Post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/HSFF Hour. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you do have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, emails, and more in our fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob, making things work tonight. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge if you're looking for another FFPC outlet to play fantasy football in, just on a weekly basis. There's no salary cap. There's no drafts. You just pick whatever players you want. You can play with or without kickers and defenses. You get to pick one player per NFL team. So no stacking in this contest. You can play in 10, 30, or 100-team contests for $35 or $200. Win up to $2,500. myffpc.com is where to go. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on it, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Want to welcome in the co-host with the most. He is the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship and a good buddy of mine and yours. He is the one, the only, the incomparable Ferrell Elliott. Happy Friday to you, my friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Good evening, Balky. There's no place I'd rather be.
We got KFFSC legend James Hicks hanging out on YouTube watching us right now. I got to get out the old oinker. In fact, I'm going to do that right now as I move my machine, just because I've been slacking on this the last couple of weeks.
You were slacker, Balky?
Yeah, no, I am with this. We're gonna bring in Mr. Oinker tonight. There we go. That's for James Hicks tonight. If I remember to do it, I'll do it again. Tom Smith, another KFFSC legend, tuning in to watch our show tonight. And let's not disappoint. Let's bring the real tonight. We'll give as much analysis as we can to everybody who is competing in Week 6 and has a difficult lineup decision ahead of them, whatever it may be. We will try to help you out tonight. I want to look back on what happened last night in the Niners-Seahawks game in Seattle. Adam Schefter from ESPN has reported that Jordan Mason is believed to have suffered a sprained AC joint against Seattle last night. Now, Schefter said this injury is not serious, but He's undergoing further testing today to confirm how not serious it is, basically. Kyle Shanahan said after the game that if it was an emergency situation, Mason could have gone back into the game. It's why we saw him wearing his helmet, standing on the sidelines, ready to go in. So week 7 against Kansas City, which is a big game, maybe we'll see Jordan Mason. However, Ferrell, even if 10 days is not enough to heal up for Mason, or even if it is, I should say, we need to be looking on the waiver wire. 2 guys stood out last night after Mason went down. One Patrick Taylor and one Isaac Guerendo. Patrick Taylor, a former Packer, Isaac Guerendo, a former Badger. So I'm very excited about both these players. If you can only roster one, who are we going after next week in waivers in case Mason can't go? Are we picking up Guerendo or are we picking up Taylor?
After that 70-plus yard carry from Guerendo behind that fantastic offensive line, I take exception of you claiming that he was a former Badger because he was most recently a Louisville Cardinal.
A Louisville Cardinal.
And if you're going to claim things, in the world of claiming, we must claim him. And, he's a very popular player here. I never really saw him as a college player have that gear that he displayed last night as a professional. But his 40 time as he ran at the combine was 4.33, and I think we saw it play out on film. This team is so good at putting depth together. And when people tell me there's no players on the waiver wire to consider picking up, well, maybe if you can't find someone to pick up, you should just always pick up the next 49er because he could be the next man up. Now, Mason's injury, the AC joint, is a painful injury and a nagging injury, but it clears with proper training. He'll be back and he'll be ready. But I think both those players have they accounted for themselves very, very well. Both deep reserve running backs that may touch the ball a little bit more in the future.
Isaac Guerendo last night, 10 carries, 99 yards, including that 76-yarder. Take that away, 9 for 23. I know you're not a fan of doing that, Ferrell, but I'm going to do it for the purposes of this conversation.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Patrick Taylor, 5 carries for 16 yards. Taylor also caught a 12-yard pass. Guerendo was not targeted. Right now, Guerendo is owned in 83% of FFPC Main Event leagues. Patrick Taylor owned in 0.00% of FFPC Main Event leagues.
One.
As Dean Wormer would say, fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through that. So we are looking at Guerendo as probably the guy. That's what I would do. Taylor's interesting, though, too. I mean, as much as he got involved, especially in the second half of the game, I would put some bids in on him if you can afford the roster spot. But Guerendo, I think, is the priority. He's part Badger, part Cardinal. How can you go wrong?
Just like you and me, Buck.
Exactly. Yes, he's the official mascot of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Malik Neighbors is not going to be playing against Cincinnati, according to Adam Schefter. This was announced this morning. Neighbors has not been able to clear concussion protocol since Thursday night in Week 4's concussion against Dallas. He is hopeful to be back by Week 7, but it is going to be the Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson show. Now, I'm playing Wan'Dale Robinson in just about every league. I have him in as a flex, as a wide receiver 3. He doesn't pile up the yardage, but as long as he's piling up the catches, I'm good with a low yardage total. However, Ferrell, Darius Slayton, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets with Neighbors out this past week, 6 for 36 and 1 for Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that the interesting thing here is, can Slayton do this again this week? If Neighbors is out, can we still count on Slayton to have maybe not 8 for 122, but 6 for 90, 6 for 80? What do you think about starting Slayton this week, Sunday Night Football, against the Bengals with no Malik Neighbors, which we know of right now?
There's legitimate ways that Slayton could work my way into the lineup. Now, it's certainly not going to be over Wan'Dale Robinson. I thought Wan'Dale was probably the biggest bargain that I was able to find on live draft day at Planet Hollywood this year. And I was pleased to get him. We were too early on Wan'Dale, too aggressive, too early, and people have been bitten by him. And it's a circumstantial situation that existed at the New York Giants with the quarterback's inability to get him the ball, and also Sterling Shepard still hanging around, as well as other receivers. Slayton is an intriguing play. He is a up and down player but I think he falls into the mix with Lazard, with maybe a banged up Jacoby Myers. Low double-digit points for Slayton is very possible, but Wandale is my guy in that offense.
He's just, I mean, he gets so many targets, and whether I think what Robinson did last week is much more repeatable than Slayton, and that's the way I would lean towards it. If you're, and it is a desperation type of thing. Like, I don't think Darius Slayton, a top 50 wide receiver this week, I think is pushing it. I think he's probably outside of that. So I would lean elsewhere if you can with Slayton. With Robinson, yeah, go with God. I think that this is going to be a good game for him. Permar 99 would take Tolbert over Slayton. I think I would too. 6 for 60 for Slayton with bad weather. I could see that happening too. And
Permar 99's name is going to be changed to Captain Obvious 99. Permar 99 has been on Tolbert for a long time, and kudos to him for being early to the party there. Another player that we were too early on the previous year.
It's true. That's another good point. Let's stay in that same NFC East, Ferrell. Brian Robinson apparently is going to be a game time decision against the Baltimore Ravens. This is a big game, 1:00 kickoff on Sunday. Robinson did not practice this week. He played through the same knee injury last week. He ended up getting 7 carries for 18 yards and 2 touchdowns. And quite frankly, that's not the ratio you're looking for. If he is out, you're looking at Austin Eckler. You're looking at Jeremy McNichols in the backfield. I can definitely flex out Eckler. Is looking at Jeremy McNichols too cute, Ferrell? This is going to be a high-scoring game between Washington and Baltimore, and there should be plenty to go around in the Commanders' backfield. McNichols, though, I think is a player that I'd like to roster, but I don't know if I'd want to start him this week.
Yes, you can start McNichols. This team has identified themselves as a 2-tier running back approach. And when they've needed 2, they've had 3 to fill the 2 spots. So I would not hesitate to start McNichols this weekend.
I want to move on to Ramondre Stevenson. The latest we've received on him, Ferrell, is that he is not going to be playing on Sunday. And it's according to Mike Reese's report for, I believe, ESPN, Gerard Mayo said that the injury is not going to be shouldn't be a long-term issue for Stevenson. This is a foot injury. So that's good. But in the meantime, it is New England against Houston this week. Houston is ranking 21st right now in average depth of tackle, which means Gibson should be able to get off the line of scrimmage and get some yards, and then it's on him to break tackles or to make that guy miss. He is going to be the starter, and he's got some pass-catching chops as well. JaMychal Hasty would be the third down back, or at least the change of pace back for New England this weekend. I have zero interest in JaMychal Hasty. In fact, I'm not even really rostering him. Gibson, even Ferrell, he's a flex for me, but not one I'm excited about.
We're getting a new quarterback in New England.
And that's the other thing. Drake May, this is his first start as well.
Well, we're going to need a check down back to get the ball too. So I like Gibson in this role. I think Gibson contributes for fantasy football purposes. No matter what the score in the game, they're going to trust the quarterback's short pass accuracy, and the running back Gibson's going to be part of that. So I like Gibson here.
The Jelly of the Month, by the way, on YouTube has a Buffalo running back question. Stay tuned for that because we're going to be asking our guest Nick Zappone about that exact question between Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. Speaking of Buffalo, Permar 99 says Devontae Adams is going to be a Buffalo Bill.
Why not?
Who says no? Kansas City, or excuse me, who says no? Buffalo or Las Vegas? Maybe neither one of them.
Why not?
And Scott Hoyt, you guys trusting Michael Pittman injury plus Anthony Richardson. Ferrell, can you tell me what's going on with Pittman? I thought he was going to be out for multiple weeks. They're talking about an IR stint, and then I found out he was on the field catching passes today. What's the latest on Pittman?
Yeah, we talk about the training staffs in the NFL being the true all-stars of the 17-game season, and we talk about tough players that want to play. Pittman, a second-generation footballer that shows up to play. We should all celebrate the kind of player that Pittman is. And maybe he saw that Joe Flacco was going to keep starting, so he said, "I'll keep playing." But it's Indianapolis. Not a lot there is working out in the way we thought or hoped, but it is a fantastically interesting team to watch, and I sure hope with whatever quarterback it is that they can get the ball to Pittman. We got commentary previously in shows from several of the listeners that really were beating the drum for Josh Downs, and now he's hurt. I was a big Pierce fan. I was early on him. He's become the best long ball target in the NFL. I think about what he could do underneath if targeted. There's some things with that club that I would do differently, but if Pittman wants to play, I'm going to let him play.
It was really a weird situation because he was not practicing on Thursday. Schefter reported on Wednesday that IR was a possibility. And then Pittman, after logging, by the way, a full practice today, not even limited, a full practice today. He said, told reporters, we still don't know what course of action is going to happen, but I'm just doing everything to put myself in the best situation to try and play. He is being listed as questionable, Ferrell. I'm looking at this game right now. The Colts this week taking on the Titans in Tennessee. This is a 1:00 game. If Pittman is active, we have to play him, don't we?
I think you do, unless you have floor receivers of 12 or 13 points that you believe in and have better matchups. Pittman has struggled with Richardson. I would look somewhere else, but everyone has rosters now that you need a Pittman. So you've got it's if you believe in the roster you put together, you've got a 20-man roster, and if you really believe in those wide receivers that you put together, then you're in pretty good shape to play some of them over Pittman. And some of them have Tucker with the Raiders. There's an interesting situation this weekend. Here's a good start. What do you do with the receivers, Shaheed down at New Orleans with the new quarterback, Spencer Rattler? There's a lot of question marks that might make you want to say, you know what, Pittman, I'll just play Pittman.
Some of those questions we'll be asking our guest tonight to see what he's going to do. And I'm very excited to welcome him in, Ryan, right now, Ferrell. 15 FFPC high-stakes titles under his belt. And he currently, because of last night's game, because of all the action he had with the Niners and the Seahawks, technically he's in first place in the FFPC main event right now. Started the week in fifth. He's moved up to first. And I want to welcome him in. You follow him on the X at NZAP. That is NZAPP. Please welcome onto the show the incomparable, the one, the only, Nick Zappone. Nick, welcome in, man.
Thank you for having me.
Excited to have you on tonight. We briefly talked or emailed each other today, and you threatened me. You didn't threaten me, but you let me know that you were wearing your beloved New York Mets hat tonight, as they are onto the NLCS after vanquishing my Milwaukee Brewers, which I think I'm over right now. But my God, the polar bear Pete Alonso just doing Milwaukee dirty, and boy, was that the shot heard around the world at around Citi Field, I should say, because Mets fans had to be going crazy after that 3-run shot in the ninth inning.
They did. And I mentioned to you that I had a fun fact. Every team that the Brewers have lost to in postseason has made it to the World Series.
And that goes back to 1981. This is not just the stat within the last few years. Right. Since 1981, this is a double digit. I think it's double digits. If it's not double digits, it's pretty close.
There's 9. This would be 10.
This would be 10.
Wow.
And like I told you via email, as soon as I found out the Mets are playing the Brewers, I placed my NLC and my NL pennant futures bet on the Mets because I knew either the streak was ending or I was going to profit from this somehow. And I'm rooting for the Mets hardcore. They beat the Phillies. Now they'll face the winner of tonight's Dodgers Padres game. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm pulling for your Mets, man. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
Before we lose too many more viewers because we're talking baseball on the HSFF hour, let's talk about what you're doing for a living when you are not playing fantasy football and leading the FFPC Main Event, Nick?
Well, I'm a control systems engineer. I work for a consulting company. Our office mainly deals with power utility companies.
And it gives you a lot of time to work on lineups and draft teams, correct?
Yeah, especially when I'm home.
Right, exactly.
I heard words that said systems and engineer. You're engineering a championship. Congratulations for all these league victories. I have one more baseball question. Are you a historical Met fan? I mean, do you go way back to the '69 team, or are you more of the type fan that would reflect your young age?
Yeah, not the '69 team. I was only 3 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
86 Mets. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some good, some storied teams in the New York Mets, and as you begin to put your career in the FFPC as a storied one, let me start with some of the questions that all of us are trying to figure out is about tight ends, and I want to feature with tight ends because I have to admit, Balky was beating the drum for this player, Tucker Kraft. And I was really I watched a lot of Oregon State football. I was really such a Luke Musgrave fan that I couldn't see Kraft's skill set defeating Musgrave and putting him on the bench. What do you want to do with a player like that? Is he a flex player for you? Jackson Smith and Jigma from last night on your main event leading squad. How did you come to the decision to keep that promising tight end on the bench?
He is a flex player for me. I actually had him in the flex last week. I took him out this week. I had JSN in there. The 49ers defense on the back end, I think they're ranked like 19th or 20th, so they're not great. I expected Seattle to be playing from behind, which happened. They did lose a possession on the return, the kickoff return for a touchdown, so they lost possession there. And JSN did get 2 end zone targets. So he caught one, he was out of bounds. The other one, was off by a lot. But so he got the target. I think the process was right. Results maybe not so much, but you got to live with those.
Yeah, Kraft has just been crazy good the last few weeks, and we got the news today that the Packers officially placed Luke Musgrave on IR, which means he's missing a minimum of 4 games. It is the Tucker Kraft show at tight end in Green Bay for sure, and very excited to see where he ends up on the season because he's one of these players that was not drafted as a top 12 guy and looks like he's for sure going to, barring injury, he's for sure going to finish in the top 12, maybe even as high as top 5 going forward. I was looking at some of your teams, Nick, and I know you play a lot of Dynasty with the FFPC as well. We actually played in a private Dynasty league together for a few years as well, which is very cool. Kendra Miller, I noticed, is on a few of your teams. Can you sell FFPC players on why this guy needs to be stashed? I happen to stash him on a couple of my teams as well. His coach has not exactly been endorsing him throughout the throughout the preseason and during drafting season. And this is a guy that's been hurt too. But he's, I'm still trying to find a roster spot for him on teams. Why are you still trying to keep him around as much as you can?
Well, Sam, when we saw what he did in the one game, he was healthy last year. He put up, double-digit points. So, running backs are always one injury away. I mean, Kamara is getting a little older. Who knows? If he breaks down at the end of the year, Miller may be somebody you can put in there and be a league winner. So yeah, if I have a spot, I'm going to stash him.
You would know, league winner. It's such a tough injury year. When you see players that you have a substantial ownership interest across many of your teams get injured, it hurts in one way. Nico Collins goes to IR. I don't have Nico Collins as much as I like. And I'm probably going to benefit from competing against guys who were relying on Nico Collins. But, man, I hate not seeing Nico Collins on the field. That's a real thrill of watching football. There's other depth in Houston. I assume you're putting Tank Dell everywhere. Talk to me also about what you're doing personally with Tank Dell, and then what your opinion is of Dalton Schultz. Can we ever return Dalton Schultz to a double-digit fantasy scoring tight end in FFPC?
Yeah, I'm putting Dell in everywhere I have him. I'm putting him in. I would have probably put him in even if Nico was playing. Nico is one of the guys, though, I missed on this year. I mean, I didn't expect Dell to take over, but I didn't expect Nico to be doing what he's doing either. So I missed on him, but I have Dell in a few places, and he's going to be in my lineup. And it's unfortunate that Nico's out on IR, but it helps the Dell owners. So. As far as Schultz, no, I'm not big on Schultz. Actually, about 10 minutes before this podcast, somebody sent me an offer in a dynasty league for Schultz for a second rounder, and I just rejected it. I'm not big on him.
And why is that? Is it just because of the great receivers that Stroud has there, or you're just not a fan of the talent?
A little both. I mean, he hasn't really been using Schultz much. Maybe with Nico out, I'll use him a little bit more, but I'm not gonna bet on that until I see it.
That Texans game in New England this week, a 37.5 point total. The Texans are 6.5 point favorites, and I think it just speaks to how good Stroud is, how good Diggs is, how good Dell is. The fact that so many people are starting these Texans, this Texans passing team or passing combo, because you would think with a 6.5 point favorite squad and a total of less than 38, you wouldn't assume a lot of passing, but probably enough to be worth starting both all of Stroud, Diggs, and Dell this weekend for sure. Roschon
and we
Johnson.
have to see if Mixon comes back.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. And I believe he practiced today. He's listed as questionable. Yeah. If Mixon is active, Nick, does that change what you would do with Tank Dell?
No, I'm still putting Dell in there. But they may run a little bit more, but I'm still going to put Dell in my lineup.
Sure. I honestly hope Mixon's active because, think about the cluster, if he's not active. We could see the return of Damian Pierce this weekend. We already saw with both those guys out last weekend that it was a Gunbawale and Cam Akers split, right? I just hope that Mixon comes back for the simple fact of you have Mixon, you play him, and if you have anybody else, you just sit them because you don't want to mess around with a four-headed running back scenario this weekend. Speaking of running backs, let's talk about the Chicago Bears, who are in London to take on the Jaguars, a 9:30 a.m. start from jolly old London town. Is Roschon Johnson a sneaky flex play against that Jaguars defense? He's been getting more and more action. He gets into the end zone last week, and certainly Swift has been doing damage as a pass catcher, but what about Roschon Johnson rushing the football? Would you be able to shoehorn him in any of your FFPC lineups as a flex this week, Nick?
Yeah, depending on your lineup, with the injuries and the bye week, you can do worse than Roschon. And actually, I think he's been in the end zone the last 2 weeks, so he is getting the goal line carries. And I would, if I had to put him in, I would put him in.
Fantastic.
I'm looking this up right now before we move off of Roschon Johnson. I want to bring up that Bears game last week. Chicago was taking on the Carolina Panthers. And granted, yes, I know it was the Panthers. But if you look at that game, Roschon Johnson had 10 carries. Swift had 21. But Roschon Johnson still got double-digit carries, only got 25 rushing yards, but he did get those 2 rushing touchdowns last week. So there is something there. And certainly, again, you talk about the teams that are on bye this week. A lot of people are missing Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Achane, Mostert, all those guys from Miami. You think about the Kansas Cities that are on bye this week too, with Hunt and Kelsey and Juju Smith-Schuster and Xavier Worthy. The Rams, you're not going to be able to put Kyron Williams in there too. And who's the one team I'm forgetting? Oh, the Vikings. No Aaron Jones, no Justin Jefferson, no Jordan Addison. There's a lot of holes in fantasy lineups this week. Roschon Johnson could be that guy that fixes your lineup in week 6. However, he's not the only one. We just talked about the Panthers. Ferrell, one quarterback has a pretty good matchup against said Panthers this week.
Well, yeah, and Balky, there's a chief named Mahomes who's also on bye this
He's
weekend.
on bye.
Guys, it's so tempting for me personally to pull that trigger on Mahomes this year. I just, I love having him on the roster, and it makes for an easy no-brainer start. So that means that the teams that I in planning this bye week, I went shopping for Kirk Cousins as my number 2 quarterback. This is the week I've been waiting for. So it goes without saying that I did not benefit from Kirk Cousins' 40 points that he threw up on the board in one of the night games. Can I benefit from him this week? Can I get 40 against Carolina? Or, hey, I'll be happy with 30. Can I get that?
I'm putting him in. Lineups that I have. The only lineup I don't have him in is the one that I have Daniels. I got to start him over Cousins. The only thing you kind of worry about is that they are playing the Panthers, and if they get a big lead, maybe they'll start running the ball the second half. But I think he should definitely get 22, 25 points.
I'll live with it.
Be a good weekend. Yeah.
Some of those scores might be a little better than what Mahomes has been getting me.
Definitely.
And yet they're still undefeated, which is just crazy to me. The Falcons at Carolina this week. Falcons are 6-point favorites. It is a total of 47. So what's that implied total here? You're looking at about 26, 27 points from Atlanta. I'll give you the Sharky guy from that game. And this is like not galaxy brain, but this is next level. Tyler Algier. If you look at what the Falcons have been doing with Bijan Robinson, I don't want to say they've been protecting him, but you're seeing a lot of stuff from him out in space where he can easily get out of bounds before he gets hit. You're seeing Algier getting a lot of the stuff in between the tackles, doing the quote-unquote dirty work, right? And if there is some dirty work to be done this game, as in running the clock, you don't run the clock by bombing it to Mooney or targeting London or getting it to Pitts. And you don't get it to Robinson in space. You get it to Algier, who can just, rub off, 3.5, 4.5 yards a carry. Maybe he gets 15, 20 carries, falls in the end zone. Maybe he gets over 100 yards too. I mean, I think Algier is a nice little flex play in this game against Carolina.
I agree with you. Especially if, like you said, they're running the clock out in the fourth quarter. They're up. Algier can be playing a lot in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on that as well. Now, we had a question. I'm going to modify this question a little bit because we had, I believe, was it CC Inc? I think it was CC Inc in the YouTube chat. He asked earlier about. Oh, my fault here. Sorry. I will get rid of that off the screen. This is what happens when I wait too long to ask a question from the chat. I got to scroll back and get it up on the screen. But this is a question about the Bills. Okay. So we have a situation right now where James Cook may or may not go. I should have looked at the practice reports. I didn't see it today. For the purposes of this question, let's say he's missing because we do have a Sunday morning waiver in the FFPC at 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, Ray Davis is probably taken, but Ty Johnson may not be taken in those leagues, that he might still be available. If Cook can't go, Nick, are you rolling with Ray Davis or are you rolling with Ty Johnson, who might be the pass catcher in that offense if Cook sits this one out?
Yeah, and actually Cook did not practice today. I did see the reports for that. He didn't practice. And I was going to say neither, but if I had to pick one, I would pick Johnson just because I think he could see some more work in the passing game.
I was wrong. It was Jelly of the Month with that question, but yeah, he is. It's a rough week to be Jelly of the Month because he's got 7 guys on bye this week, which is awful. The Bills
if you have Cook, then you may want to pick up one of those guys just in case.
Right, and because that's the Monday night game this week too.
Yeah.
So we'll find out what Cook does tomorrow. That's going to be the most important practice day. But yeah, I would definitely be picky if Davis or Johnson is available and you have James Cook. That is the perfect Braylon. You're not going to be able to pick up Breece Hall or Braylon Allen, which would be your other running back plays on Monday Night Football. You could grab one of those Bills like Curtis Samuel, maybe. I'm telling you, Ferrell.
Don't do it, Buck. You don't.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I'm off the Curtis Samuel train.
Right. So not Curtis Samuel. Not Curtis Samuel. Dawson Knox is a possibility. I don't think Lazard is out there. Conklin's not out there. So that's kind of what you're looking at. You'd be much better served to pick up Ty Johnson if you could. The Bills are a 2.5-point favorite, total of 41 in that game. But Nick, you're saying Ty Johnson probably over Davis because of the pass catching?
Yes. Yeah, I think he'll get more work. And he's been getting work even with Cook in there. So I'm leaning Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. I normally I would say, okay, volume is king at running back. Ray Davis probably touches the ball more, but I don't know if those are high value touches, especially against that Jets rushing defense. Sometimes you like to think like, oh, Davis, maybe, he gets a 1 or 2 yard goal line carry or something like that. It's not a layup against that Jets defense. So I think you're right on Ty Johnson here.
We used to work for an old guy cutting tobacco, Balky, and his wife, there'd be 4 of us, and she'd make 2 pimento cheese sandwiches for lunch and cut them in half. That's what the Buffalo backfield looks like to me. It's a couple bites of that, and that's what you're going to get. In the words of the great Judge Smill, you'll get nothing and like it. I think that's what you've got coming to. As we said, we have a New Yorker here to be exposed to. What's wrong with the Bills? Can you just boil it down? What has happened?
The loss of Diggs has really hurt them. They don't have a true number one. Everybody thought Kincaid was going to step up, but I think he still needs a true outside receiver to.
Who doesn't?
To count on. So I think that's the problem with him.
Okay, well, let's go to where the problem with Cleveland Browns, another incurable problem that may exist. When you think of fantasy purposes, last night we watched a monster of a team, and we had Deebo Samuel scored us 3 points the week before, and you just could feel that it was going to erupt in scoring. And Ayuk had a bad night. Jennings didn't score points, but when you have those players on the field, and they're surrounded by these other great players, and the quarterback with his timing and what he and Kittle did last night. My point is, you just have hope, because in Cleveland, hope is hard to hang on to. But here comes Chubb back. I drafted him and have held on to him naturally in hopes that he would be back around week 10 or 11, Balky. Is that what we were talking about?
We were talking about that. Time frame has changed, though.
Yeah, we're knocking on the door of Chubb coming back. Can he elevate not only the game, can he elevate and become a running back that you would want to have as a week-to-week start? And can he elevate some of the Browns players around him?
Namely the quarterback.
No.
Yeah. I think he can. He is coming off this injury. I would not put him in the first week he's back. You got to see what he does first, and I think they'll still split carries until he can show that he can, take a full workload. But
unless you're starting Ray Davis, unless you're thinking about starting Ray Davis, would you put him in over Ray Davis?
I would put him in over Ray Davis.
There we go.
What stinks about this is what happens to Jerome Ford, right? And what could be really problematic is, and Chubb's already been ruled out for week 6. We know he's not coming back this week. If Chubb comes back for week 7 against Cincinnati, we know we're not, you just said, Nick, we're not starting him in week 7. We have to see where we're at with Chubb, and we got to see his usage. But what do we do with Jerome Ford in week 7? What do we do with Jerome Ford if this is like a part? What if it's a timeshare with Chubb and Ford going forward? Because Ford's done nothing to suggest he can't handle a full workload. He's done nothing not to deserve at least some of the carries, some of the catches out of the backfield going forward. And that's where it becomes a bit of a fantasy quagmire too, because you don't want to start both those guys. And maybe it's just your roster will dictate whether you're going to play Chubb or Ford. But that's what just stinks about Chubb coming back, is it really handcuffs what you can do with Jerome Ford, even as a flex. going forward here. Let's talk about emails. Let's get to some emails here. Nick, the first one is Pete in Farmingdale, New York. This is a Ravens question. Here we go. Hey, Nick, which backup Ravens running back is the right one to have? Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, or Rasheen Ali behind Derrick Henry? Obviously, Pete in Farmingdale, New York. We appreciate it. Derrick Henry's a beast. We don't want to think about getting hurt, but we do live in reality, Nick, and there's always a possibility of that happening. If that happens, is there one of these guys that you would be willing to trot out there to start? Do they all cannibalize each other and make none of them worthwhile to start? And if that's the case, then none of them are worth rostering if you can't play them. How do you feel about the Ravens running back situation as it pertains to high-stakes fantasy football right now?
Well, right now you have to go with Hill because the other two guys are still on IR. Keaton Mitchell, I don't think is going to be ready for a while. I think he tore his ACL like in November last year, so I don't think he's going to be ready. If he is, it may be late, week 10, 12, somewhere around there. I think Ali is scheduled to come off soon, but he's a rookie. We really haven't seen much from him. We don't know much about him, so I got to stick with Hill for now.
With what's going on with that team, there's certain situations where I could see Justice Hill as a flex. If you've got him as a handcuff, you put him on the field or put him in the lineup with Henry. I could actually see double-digit production from Hill as a pass catcher out of that backfield. I really, really like the player.
He didn't do much last week, but the week before he had double digits. He got 6 passes, I think, for 60 yards. So, he definitely makes a good flex play.
Hill is an interesting guy when you look at what he's been able to do. Nothing earth-shattering on the ground, right? Has not gotten more than 5 carries in the game, has not topped 35 rushing yards in a game, has not found the end zone rushing. However, he's got 2 games already this year of 6 catches, 52 yards and 78 yards respectively, got in the end zone once in one of those games. So he is really hit or miss. Like, he's had 2 playable games so far this year. But if Henry were to go down, I mean, it's not that he'd be like an every down guy for them, but definitely you want him in your lineup if that were to happen for sure with Justice Hill. By the way, I want to post this in the chat. This is for your benefit, Nick. We have it from Tom Smith. The New York Mets will be facing the Los Angeles Dodgers as they move on to the NLCS. A 2-0 victory at Chavez Ravine tonight as the Dodgers move on in 5 games to face the New York Mets. 24 scoreless innings for the Padres to end their season. Yikes. Those are some cold bats. And it's too bad that your Mets couldn't face those cold bats in the Padres, because I would love to see that from a financial standpoint.
A lot of favoritism for the Mets, and Tom Smith's a San Diego resident, so that one has to.
I didn't even realize that.
Also reporting Derek Greer, a Los Angeles resident, who I had the pleasure of speaking to today, and he informs us that he is currently 72nd with a bullet coming to catch Nick. Dodger fan who plays in Kentucky in the FFPC. So go Dodgers, says Derek. It's that time of year. Do you play fantasy baseball as well?
No, I don't.
No, it's
no, never played it.
Well, it's a full-time job. Balky, remember when we were at Planet Hollywood? And Nick, were you in Planet Hollywood Live, or did you do all your work online?
No, it was all online. I'd like to get out there maybe next year. This actually is my first main event team.
Really?
Oh,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Well, you're doing a bang-up job for your first effort in the main event, my friend.
Well, I
awesome.
have two. I have 2 teams this year, but it's the first time. I actually stopped playing redraft because I got so hooked on Dynasty, and I started redraft maybe about 3-4 years ago. Last year I did 5 Fantasy Pros teams. I made the playoff in 3 of the leagues, and I won 2 championships, and I turned those 2 championships into the main event team. So, first main event.
Well, you'll have to drop the word maybe from your conversation and just say that you will be there. And when you do, you'll meet a lot of these guys that are in our chat room, and you'll be very glad you did. And you've got a lot of guys here. You got a lot of guys here that are very envious of being in your shoes. Balky, what more emails we got?
We got one question that I screwed up from CC Inc. So we're gonna I screwed it up. It's the end of the week. I'm screwing stuff up. Okay, CC Inc. He wants to know. Ramondre Stevenson is out this week, which we touched on at the earlier portion of the show.
Ooh.
Would you start Antonio Gibson, Nick, knowing that no Stevenson this week against the Texans, or would you be playing Tank Bigsby in London against that Bears defense? Those are the two choices. Facing CC Inc., which way would you roll?
I'd have to lean towards Bigsby. I still don't. I mean, Gibson has shown some stuff, but Bigsby looked really, really good the last game. And I know the Bears defense is good, but I think they're a lot better on the back end on the pass defense than they are on the rushing defense. So I'm going to go with Bigsby there.
I like that assessment too, because I think they want to run in that stadium, in that environment. And the Jaguars are a team that hoped to be a really good team, expected to be a good team, and are looking for answers as to why they're not there. So I think that's a great way to go after it. Man, we talked about a lot of players that we didn't really dream of back in week 1 or 2 talking about. I think all our sleepers have been awakened and trotted out of bed and into the lineups. But perhaps you can think of one that we have not spoke of that FFPC players should get in the lineups. And then, when it comes to being disappointed, if we start Pittman, we're looking at being disappointed. Last week we've been rarely disappointed by Deebo Samuel, but he put up 3 points last week. As a public service earlier in the show, Balky reminded us that Breece Hall is not available on the waiver wire, which I appreciated that.
You're welcome, America. That's why you watch this show.
So were a lot of running backs that put up the same score that Breece Hall put up. So let me ask you this. Who's the big disappointment this week? Who's somebody that everybody – it's a no-brainer. You're going to put him in the lineup, really get that crystal ball out, and we'll know that you're a champion of engineering and systems when we look at when we gather here next week and say, Nick told us that this Pro Bowl player, this fantasy darling, this top 40 draft pick, he was going to lay an egg. Nick knew it. So who are these guys, Nick?
So back to that last question about
there are about 4 questions in there. Just grab whichever one you want.
So the low hanging fruit here is ETN. I'm staying away from him, but I'll give you another one. The other one I'm thinking of is Kincaid.
Oh,
yeah,
for the Bills, because again the Jets are really good in the pass defense. They haven't given up a touchdown to tight ends this year, and they played Kittle. The first week they had Kittle, and I think Kittle had the best game of any tight end, and I think he was like 4 for 40 or something like that. So barely double-digit points. So I think Kincaid's going to disappoint again.
Just real quick on that Dalton Kincaid thing, and I was thinking about this past week too. The Bills were down in that game 17-3 at halftime against the Texans. They spent a lot of the second half throwing, trying to catch up. Josh Allen, 30 pass attempts. He completed 9 of them. I had to rub my eyes. I didn't think that was, is this Josh Allen or is this, Josh Freeman from the Buccaneers and the Vikings back in the day? It was crazy to see that. So you had to throw to catch back up. He only completes 9 passes. And oh, by the way, Dalton Kincaid only caught 2 passes that game. This is not he does not have the mark of the number 1 pass catcher on this team. Maybe he is, but it's not doing anything for him from a fantasy standpoint. So Kincaid is definitely a guy I would be concerned about at this point. To go back to the ETN versus Bigsby conversation just real quick on this. I know that they said that ETN was dealing with the shoulder injury, and that's why Bigsby was in there. But bear in mind, Bigsby was still in there prior to the ETN shoulder thing, too, where the ETN was still coming back, and Bigsby is still getting carries. Bigsby, 13 carries, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Travis Etienne, 6 carries, 17 yards. Travis Etienne did catch 6 passes for 43 yards, but Bigsby caught a 28-yard touchdown pass in that game as well. I think this Bigsby conversation is very important right now. We've heard from a lot of high-stakes players on this show the last couple of weeks that said, go out and get Bigsby, make sure he's on your team. And I think when you look at this game on Sunday, Bigsby is going to be a very intriguing option to get out there in your starting lineups, even if ETN is healthy. One Michael Quinzel had a question here about let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here it is. Let's go Mets. Shaheed, he's a Mets fan, obviously too, Nick. Rashid Shaheed or Tank Dell, Fantasy Pros Championship. He sits at 3-2. Ferrell kind of brought up the Shaheed thing before. What do you do with Spencer Rattler throwing him the ball this week? You talked about playing Tank Dell everywhere. Is it just easier to say, hey, I know what quarterback is throwing to Tank Dell. I know it's CJ Stroud. I'm going to play Dell over Shaheed, or is this a more nuanced answer? What do you think?
I'm still going with Dell there. Plus, I think Shaheed is dealing with an injury.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if he practiced today or not.
I'm going to look that up right now.
I want to say he didn't. But he is injured or dealing with an injury. So as far as we know, Dell is healthy and he's got Stroud as his quarterback. I'm sticking with Dell.
Limited practice.
Mike is asking questions he knows the answer to. Right. Come on, Mike, give us a tougher one.
Limited practice yesterday and today for Shaheed. However, Dennis Allen did say that he will play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it's Spencer Rattler. I don't know. Ferrell did. Well, okay. Let me throw this to you first, Nick, because you're a dynasty guy. Spencer Rattler was the first quarterback drafted after all those quarterbacks went in the first round this year's draft. Spencer Rattler was the next quarterback drafted in like round 5 or round 4, whatever it was. Does he 5? Okay, there you go. Does he have enough juice to keep Shaheed and Olave relevant against the Buccaneers this week? Because there's going to be people that are thinking like, God, I'd love to play Olave and Shaheed, but I don't know if I want to with this quarterback.
Yeah, and I think he runs a lot. That's one of the assets he has is running ability. So I'm going to take a wait and see approach with him. I can't start anybody until I see that he can support them.
So
I think he's a very savvy quarterback, and I liked him a great deal. And I thought the Saints got him a buy, got him a real value. Buying him in the 5th round and using that draft capital. It would be really interesting to see what would happen if Taysom Hill was available and to see how he would be used in this game with Rattler. But I believe in Rattler, but not necessarily this week.
Nick, is there any like quote unquote studs? I know Ferrell kind of touched on this before that you would think about benching this week, guys that maybe have been slumping or maybe a guy that you think is going to disappoint this weekend. Is there anybody that you would look at actually sitting?
Well, I think we mentioned Kincaid.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually got to the sleeper question.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead with your sleeper.
We're going to give you extra time to find some.
Ferrell's of the opinion that most of them are awake right now, but I'm sure you could find a Rip Van Winkle or two for us tonight.
Yeah, I got a running back and then a receiver. The running back, I'm going to go with Tracy. I think he looked really, really good last week. I know that Singletary may be coming back. We'll probably get the start. But if I'm the coach, I'm putting in Tracy, at least get him some touches, and he looks more explosive. On the wide receiver end, I like Adunze this week. Jacksonville Their pass defense isn't very good, and I think Caleb Williams is, starting to, it's starting to slow down for him, and maybe he's getting a little more comfortable out there. He had a good week last week, and so I'm going with the Dunze as a sleeper wide receiver this week.
And Bears Jaguars game is going to be fun. I'm a big fan of the Sunday morning game. So because 11 hours of football is just not enough for me.
Not enough.
On Sunday. I need 14. And so I get it on Sunday morning this week for sure as well. It's actually, I have season tickets for the Packers, Nick, and I'm actually hoping I can sell them because it's supposed to rain in Lambeau. And I don't know if I want to go party all day there in the rain, although I've done it before. It's not bad. But if I can sit on my couch for 14 hours and watch football all day, man, that is a great Sunday. And it's a great Friday anytime we get to talk to the FFPC main event leader, who happens to be Nick Zappone right now. 5th place heading into week 5. Big night for you last night with Deebo Samuel. Who did you all have last night? You had Deebo Samuel, had George Kittle going last night, right?
I had Kenny Walker and then JSN
and Ken Walker. Okay, there you go. So you are in first place. Everybody's chasing you right now. We will continue to follow you on X at NZAP. That's NZAPP. It's right at the bottom of your screen there. Nick, it has been so much fun catching up with you. We miss you in Gridiron Legends. Listen, you got to come back to that league at some point. We'll kick somebody out for you to get you back in that league. It would be tremendous to have you back in. But listen, maybe we can get you on in December or January when you're holding up that big $1 million check. That'd be a fun time to talk with you as well. Good luck the rest of the way. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Friday night, dude.
Thank you. Let's go Mets.
Go Mets. Go Mets indeed. Let's go Mets. OMG. That is Nick Zappone from the FFPC main event, top of the heap, as he is leading the competition heading into Sunday of this week. Great stuff from him as well. Let's get into a couple of the questions here, Ferrell, from the YouTube chat. Tom Smith, does anyone dare to sit the slumping Breece Hall? Ferrell, not only is this dude slumping right now, but Braylon Allen is getting in there as well. I was listening to the Fantasy Empire podcast, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was Nelson Sousa said, you look at that Jets game on Sunday. Breece Hall touched the ball once in the first 2 series, and then they brought Braylon Allen in for the 3rd series. By the time Breece Hall got back on the field after having 1 touch, it was halfway through the 2nd quarter. I'm worried about Hall because, number 1, of the offense. Number 2, I don't know what to expect with Todd Downing calling plays this week after they had fired Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett's been taken away from his play calling capability. And then the aspect of just not performing up to what we thought. It would take a very unique situation for me to sit Breece Hall, but I don't think I think it's possible that I would look at sitting him this week. Most leagues I would not, but I think it's possible.
I think I would play him because I'm asking questions while one of the best defensive coaches in the game gets cut or gets released or gets fired, whatever you want to label it. It might be because their star running back's not carrying the ball. Now, his backup has ran with authority and has been an aggressive player. He looks like he's more than mentally prepared and physically capable. And Balky, when you were one of the first ones to point this out, that with this team, you were talking even about the 3rd team. But the 3rd string running back very, very early, you've always thought that there would have to be a support back for Breece Hall, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it here, and the number 2 guy's getting a good chance to really be the guy. I've got my sleeper, Balky.
Who's your sleeper this week, my friend?
Oh, there's several of them.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are the Las Vegas Raiders receiving corps.
Yeah. Is there anybody left there? Is it just Trey Tucker?
It's the guys that Aiden O'Connell have been throwing to. So, we got a new quarterback that I think is the right quarterback for the players that are surrounding him. I think when they had Adams, I think Gardner Minshew was the right quarterback for him. Now I think that O'Connell might be the right quarterback for this Raider team. They got a tough matchup, but hey, It's something to think about.
It is something to think about. I think Trey Tucker is a borderline flex for me this week. And that's not a knock on Tucker. Like, he could be their number one receiver this week, quite frankly. It's just a really bad matchup with Pittsburgh. And it stinks for Tucker that he's in that situation. It stinks for AOC that he's in that situation. But maybe it's a big Brock Bowers week. Scott Hoyt wants to know, Ferrell, is this going to be a big Keenan Allen week Sunday morning in London? Does he have a big game? I remain bearish on Keenan Allen. I like Nick's call about Dunze. I think DJ Moore is going to be a beast. We talked about Swift and Johnson. I haven't seen the same juice from Keenan Allen this year as I have in previous years. So until I see it, I'm not really excited about starting Keenan Allen.
Guy's a competitor. It has to come. And I liked that post by Mr. Hoyt because I believe that it is. I believe that it will happen, and you just don't know when. And I would rather take my chances with him than some of the other receivers that I might be forced to play this week.
Yeah, I think I will look elsewhere, but I may not have better options than Allen for my flex. So yeah, I don't think he's not startable, but I would try to find somebody else. Bucky or Dowdle this week, and do I drop 4? That is the question that Johnny Betts VIP is asking us tonight. Wow, VIP in the chat, Ferrell. This is great stuff.
Johnny
VIP. Yeah, so Irving is taking on the fighting Spencer Rattlers in the Big Easy. And I do think he is the running back that you want to play over Rachaad White, who's dealing with a foot injury. I do like Irving this week, but man, Ferrell, the game that Detroit-Dallas game this week, if you look at the total of that, not that I look at over-unders as the end-all, be-all, but I look at that game with the Lions and Cowboys, 52.5. Dowdle's the starting running back, has not had much competition. We haven't heard anything from Dalvin Cook. Jerry Jones had to come out of his way and talk about why Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been playing more. I really like Dowdle here. I think Irving's fine, but I'm going to lean towards Dowdle, a guy who's not only been a threat rushing the ball, but catching the ball out of the backfield here.
That's exactly right. And the Ezekiel Elliott usage is puzzling, especially inside the yard line. If you're going to have Ezekiel Elliott on your roster, this is where it counts, and he's not getting the ball down there. And it's a mystery to me, and that would make me lean Dowdle. And yes, Mike, we got to have you coming back to the show because you can't get away with calling Tolbert a sleeper. Come on. We've missed you a couple weeks, Mike. You'll get back to form real soon.
Let's see. Do I want to ask? Do we have anything other? Okay. CC Inc., Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson, easily the most disappointing first rounders. Christian McCaffrey is honorable mention. I was talking with somebody about this today, and I was like, we've all been disappointed with those top 3 running backs, and yet they still all have the opportunity in front of them to finish the season strong. And then we won't talk about these bad starts. As long as they're carrying us through the championship.
With McCaffrey, you may have drafted him, but you haven't put up poor numbers. You played somebody else.
That's what I was saying too. Like, at least with McCaffrey, you've been able to play, some of these other running backs that have been drafted in the mid rounds, like Bucky Irving, like Rico Dowdle. At least you're getting production out of those guys, where as Hall and Robinson, it's not exactly been great. Couple of emails here at Ferrell to end it tonight. John in Perrine, Florida. Josh Allen or Kyler Murray this week. That is John in Perrine, Florida. We appreciate it. As weird as it sounds, I'm going to play Kyler Murray this week at Lambeau Field. Rainy, what's expected to be rainy Lambeau Field. Still taking Murray there over Josh Allen, facing a Jets defense. He's coming off a bad game. I don't know if this is the tonic that he needs right now. Give me Murray over Allen. Your thoughts?
I think I'm going with you, Balky.
Murray is the play over Josh Allen. Chuck in Wellston, Michigan. With Audric Estime possibly coming back this week, should I avoid starting all Broncos running backs? That is an interesting question. Denver this week ends up taking on the Chargers in Denver. It's a game that features a very low total. Javonte Williams, underwhelming. Jaleel McLaughlin, underwhelming. Audric Estime, throw him into the mix. Yes, I am ignoring all Broncos running backs, Ferrell. Do not want to be in business with any of them in week 6.
Not ready to give up on Javonte Williams. And based on what some of my teams need, he's all I've got. So we've talked about playing a lot of running backs, and I would rather play Williams in front of many of them.
I will freely admit that because of the situation that some of my teams are in, I will be starting Javonte Williams this week, but I don't have to like it. Final question of Tony in Albuquerque. What's up, gentlemen? Is Romeo Doubs going to get a ton of catches this week in his first game back after suspension? We appreciate it, Tony. I can weigh in on this. That is not the way the Packers offense works. There is no squeaky wheel getting the grease in this Packers offense. I think you can expect a quote-unquote normal game from Doubs and everybody else. What's normal for the Packers pass catchers? I don't know because they have so many good ones and they tend to spread the ball around. We've seen Dontavian Wicks have a couple of really good weeks. We've seen Jaden Reed basically be good almost every week, save maybe 1 week this season. Watson is just he's more missed than hit, so I could easily see him being benched. Tucker Kraft, you got to get in your lineup. So Kraft and Reed are the must-start guys. Ferrell, after that, I'm not too excited about anybody else, and that includes Wicks and Doubs.
Your Packer receivers need to be on your best ball teams, Bucky.
Yeah, which we've said since February, essentially. This is not news. What is also not qualifying as news is Ferrell Elliott is awesome, and it was a pleasure hanging out with you tonight, my friend. The commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com, is where to go to learn more. Thank you so much, dude. I always appreciate our conversations. Be good. Have a great weekend, and we will do this again a week from today.
Thank you.
Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, hanging out with us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on a Friday night, as we normally do. I want to thank Ferrell. I want to thank Nick Zappone for hopping aboard tonight, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for listening, streaming, downloading, consuming this show. It is going to be a big week of fantasy shows. I'm not going to tell you everything that's going on next week, but instead of the normal 3, we are going to do 6 shows because the following week I will be out of town and no access to a good enough internet connection to do any video streams. So you're going to get 2 high stakes lowdowns, 2 high stakes fantasy football shows, and 2 high stakes fantasy football hours next week. We will be back on this program on Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern with the Week 5 third-place team owner in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Larry Dunn will be my guest, and he will co-host that show with me on Wednesday. So 10 p.m. for the HSFF Hour. In case you missed Tuesday night's RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Week 5 FFPC Main Event leader Jay Flake, you can watch that on the FFPC socials or anywhere you get your podcasts. Next Monday, we'll be going live. It is a pregame show for Monday Night Football. The Week 5 fifth-place team manager in the Fantasy Pros Championship, Craig Mastro, will return to these airwaves. Always love talking with that guy. He will hop aboard at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll take that right up till 8 o'clock, and then you can zoom in to Monday Night Football. It'll be a pregame show on Monday night for the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. In case you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football show on the Better Sports Network, you can watch it on the BSN socials, the BSN website, or the FFPC socials. I co-hosted with Casey Kasem from Rotoballer. Certainly a pleasure to have her on. She brought a lot of great insights to the table, and you can rewatch that at your convenience. Next Tuesday, we will be going live at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a fun Tuesday night because we'll go from 7 p.m. Until 9 p.m. for the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football show, and then we'll do a RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown at 10 p.m. that night. So wall-to-wall fantasy football. Would you have it any other way? Of course not. What does Jim Harbaugh always say? Who has it better than us? Nobody. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft, no salary cap. MyFFPC.com is where to go. No stacking, but other than that, you can choose the 10 or 12 players you want on your roster. Enter for as little as $35. Win up to $2,500. 10, 30, and 100 team contest now available. MyFFPC.com. That's MyFFPC.com. Remember to like, subscribe, comment on this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be, once again, Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern with Craig Mastro on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Oinker says good night, and your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I know we mentioned this a couple of times during the show tonight, but bear in mind, 9:30 a.m. kickoff for the Bears and Jaguars in London. I would strongly urge you to submit your lineups on Saturday night or get up really early on Sunday. But let's face it, alarms don't always work. Set your lineup on Saturday night and make sure your Bears and Jaguars are appropriately started or sat so you have a happy week 6. Hopefully the ball bounces your way. We'll talk with you on Monday night on the RotoViz High Stakes Slowdown. HSFF Hour returns 10 p.m. Wednesday night. See you then.